Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals. If you haven't been sitting under a rock for the past year or so, you've probably heard of Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Hater or lover, you gotta admit, she's a bit extreme. Cortez herself even said she was a radical. What's radical about her? Well, let's let her explain.
Hello, Bronx and Queens. My name is Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, and I am running to be your next Congresswoman on June 26th in our Democratic primary election. I wanted to take a quick minute and talk about 5 issues that our campaign is talking about and the 5 changes that we want to make.
This is a video from Cortez's own YouTube channel. It's called 5 Key Issues with Alexandria. Before I start, I will admit this video is a bit old, but she still advocates for these types of ideas and policies, so I think this is still relevant. Another note, if you disagree with anything I say, feel free to criticize in the comments. In fact, I encourage it. With that aside, let's begin looking into these ideas and if they're actually feasible. All sources will be in the description.
1. A federal jobs guarantee. A federal jobs guarantee will establish a public option for employment so that no person who is looking for a job has to go without one. This public option for employment will also establish a $15 minimum wage pegged to inflation, as well as paid health care on the job and paid family and sick leave. So no family has to risk unemployment because they're taking care of a sick one or because they just had a child.
Alright, so she wants a federal jobs guarantee with a mandatory $15 minimum wage. Okay, let's make a hypothetical scenario to picture this. Imagine a small restaurant and they're forced to pay their waiters $15 an hour under this minimum wage law. If the business doesn't get enough profit, 3 things can happen. 1. They fire their workers. 2. They cut employee hours and overtime, leaving the restaurant undermanned. Or 3. They increase prices at the store, which would not only drive away customers, but now the $15 these workers have now earned is less valuable than it was before. If you want to see a better and more in-depth explanation about the minimum wage and its effects, fee.org did an amazing video on the subject. I'll put the link to the video in the description. As for the federal jobs part, what happens when you have too many underqualified workers in federal jobs? You'll end up spending billions, possibly trillions of dollars on unnecessary labor. That's basically just welfare. But then you might say, welfare's good, isn't it? It keeps people out of poverty. Actually, that's not entirely true. Since the war on poverty began in 1964, the U.S. has put $22 trillion into welfare programs, excluding Social Security and Medicaid. That's not much more than the size of the current U.S. debt. And actually, if you take a look at the graph, poverty stops declining and starts erratic fluctuation shortly after we started the war on poverty. And after more fluctuating, the poverty rate went from 18% in 1964 to 15% in 2012. Is a 3% decrease worth $22 trillion in a massive debt? And we're not even certain that these policies actually were responsible for the decrease. So I would say no thanks. But yeah, let's look at your next point.
2. Improved and expanded Medicare for all. Improving Medicare for all, lowering copays, and expanding the system so that every American has the opportunity to buy into Medicare will improve our healthcare system for the entire country.
Alright, Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders also promoted this idea of a single-payer system in his presidential campaign. On the surface, it seems pretty attractive, right? Affordable medicine for all. But it does have downsides. Let's look at some of those downsides. In fact, let's look at an example of a single-payer system that already exists. Canada, the most popular example. According to a survey in 2016 by the Commonwealth Fund, 44% of Canadians had to wait 1 to 4 months for non-emergency surgery, 33.6% waited over 4 hours for emergency care, and 58.5% waited over a month for specialist care. Now let's compare that to the US, which has a mostly privatized system. The US had 31.7% of people wait 1 to 4 months for non-emergency surgery, 11.2% wait over 4 hours for emergency care, and 25.3% wait over a month for specialist care. Given these numbers, the US is an average 22.6% faster at treatment than Canada. According to the same survey, the UK also had higher wait times under its single-payer system. And speaking of the UK, they also have flaws. An article from the New York Times stated that in London, at some emergency wards, patients had to wait more than 12 hours before they are attended to. Corridors are jammed with beds carrying the frail and elderly. To deal with the situation, hospitals had been ordered to postpone non-emergency surgeries until the end of the month. I don't think that's the quality of care that we get here in the US. This completely discounts how expensive a single-payer system would even be. According to a study done by the Mercatus Center, a Bernie Sanders-style Medicare for All plan would cost $32 trillion in 10 years. Yes, our healthcare system is expensive. Better things usually are, but that's not even the main reason it's expensive. The fundamental reason for our high healthcare costs are third-party payers. But there are also other big contributors like overregulation, lack of competition, lack of doctors, and quality, just to name a few. Our healthcare system is definitely flawed. We have many problems to address. My point is just that a single-payer system is not a good solution. With that addressed, let's look at her next point.
3. Tuition-free public college and trade school. As our economy develops, we always increase our educational opportunities to match. Tuition-free public college and trade school will ensure that no child refuses to get an education because they don't believe that their family can afford it. By allowing these opportunities to be accessible to all Americans, we can educate ourselves as we see fit, and we can continue to be the most innovative country in the world.
Well, yeah, that does sound great, doesn't it? Free education for all. How could that possibly be bad? Except when you look closer, it becomes less and less utopian-like. Okay, ask yourself this question. Why don't employers care if you have a high school diploma? It's because it's really easy to get, and anyone can get it. Now imagine making a college degree extremely easy and free to get. You see the problem here, devaluation. Her point is also assuming that college teaches people invaluable skills to use in the workforce, and that you need a college degree to be successful. Neither of these are necessarily true. This also completely ignores how left-leaning colleges and universities are today. For example, the University of Michigan pays their vice provost of equity and inclusion $400,000 a year to find discrimination and basically anything politically incorrect on their campus. And what happens when they don't find it? They're fired, so they have to find it, even where it doesn't exist. And right-wing speakers are often banned and not allowed to speak at universities because they're too hateful or offensive. Ben Shapiro, for example, was banned from speaking at Grand Canyon University, and the University of Santa Cruz has an activist-in-residence program whose purpose is to recruit new leftist activists. On top of this, the University of Michigan spends $11 million a year on inclusion programs that admit minorities to the school based on race and not qualifications. As for the assumption that college is necessary, that's still not entirely true. You don't need an expensive degree in order to be successful. A study from WealthX found that 70.1% of billionaires only have a bachelor's degree, and stating possessing a degree from a university is not a requirement for becoming a billionaire. Lastly, college and university degrees don't guarantee good-paying jobs. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, 22% of people making minimum wage have college degrees. It would seem college does far more to indoctrinate than to educate. So with that being said, let's look at the next clip.
4. 100% renewable energy by 2035. Our nation and our world are in a climate crisis, but we have the opportunity to turn the ship around. But we can only do it if we come together and embark upon an ambitious legislation known as the Green New Deal. The fact of the matter is fossil fuels cannot last forever, and we must transition to solar and wind technologies and more if we are going to leave a healthy planet for our children and our grandchildren to live and enjoy.
Okay, before you leftists go out and say something like, oh my god, he doesn't believe in global warming, let me say the following. Of course, global warming is real, and of course we should try to be less reliant on fossil fuels. But your Green New Deal is just crazy, okay? There are a lot of problems with it. One of them being that people in Hawaii would basically be stranded. But my personal opinion on energy is that we should invest the money into research, and not implementing inefficient sources that we have now, such as solar and wind. But I'm not the kind to make baseless claims, so I'm going to show you why I think they're inefficient. Germany is the biggest user of solar and wind. That sounds great, right? Except for the fact that there are times with extreme energy shortages, and there are times where there's so much energy that the power companies actually have to charge negative rates for their power. In other words, they're paying people to use their electricity. But then you might say, let's just use a ton of batteries. I don't think that even the world's supply of batteries is enough to power every house on Earth for a night. But even so, to make batteries, you need to mine lithium. And lithium mining is really bad for the environment. The best source of renewable energy we have right now is nuclear, but that still produces nuclear waste. But even so, I think we should go to nuclear if we were to invest in the power source we have right now. So again, I say we research possible energy sources, such as nuclear fusion, instead of becoming Germany in its terms of power. Next clip.
5. Broad-based immigration reform and the abolition of ICE. ICE was just established in 2003 in the same suite of legislation as the Patriot Act and the Iraq War. And ever since the establishment of that legislation, American civil rights have eroded over the last 14 years. In order for us to feel safer in our streets, our churches, our schools, and our homes, we must abolish ICE.
Okay, I'm being completely honest when I say, what the hell are you talking about, Cortez? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's try to analyze this. American civil rights have eroded away? No examples are given, so it's kind of hard to say anything except what rights? And in order to feel safer, we must abolish ICE. What? Okay, I honestly have no clue what she means. This is not me trying to be mean. I can't figure this out. ICE doesn't go around shooting U.S. citizens. The only thing I could possibly fit the situation are illegal immigrants, but that claim is still completely false. And the most ironic part about this is the reason she wants to abolish ICE to feel safer is the reason I want to keep it. I'd go into detail about it, but it appears we've run out of time. Maybe in another video I'll talk about immigration. Anyways, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, but if by the chance you didn't, be sure to tell me why in the comments. But please keep it civil.